Hi there. Good to see you again. I'm Mark Whitten with the Theater of Tomorrow. Thanks for visiting us here again at our YouTube channel. We'd like to kick off some of these videos starting with the history of the Theater of Tomorrow. And in this video, we'd like to, Travis and I, talk a little bit about how we met, how the Theater of Tomorrow got started as an idea, what brought us out here to Los Angeles, and what inspired us to start creating this podcast. And then from there, what are all the complications that go into making a podcast? Because there are quite a few of them, and we had a few missteps along the way. We had to think about things like, how do you get it online? How do you get a cast? How do you get a crew? How do you produce it with all the soundy bits and the fiddly things? So we're gonna sit down, take a bit of time to chat about that. Thanks for joining us. All eyes forward. Travis? Okay.
I think it's so funny, the intro video has you sitting over there. Boing. All right.
Yeah, well.
Hi, Mark.
So glad you could make it.
Thanks for having me
Oh yeah, thanks for being here.
on our show,
On this
on our
balcony.
show's channel. Making me beautiful.
Camera's doing a thing.
History of the
So,
show.
Yeah, the history of the show.
I guess let's start like David Copperfield from the beginning. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it was about Thomas Dickens. Charles Dickens.
Thomas Dickens.
It's
I
a
think
book
I'm
by
thinking of
Charles
the Magician.
Dickens. Right.
Am I just?
No, David Copperfield is a magician as well.
All right, moving
We're both
on. So yes.
So the way I got started in podcasting is the way most people got started in podcasting, which is Welcome to Night Vale. Which hit for me in 2012 when all the Tumblr kids started talking about it. And I got very interested. What's this spooky show? It was described as NPR from the Twilight Zone.
Right.
And I was very into that. So I listened to the first episode, I got hooked, instantly listened to like 30 episodes and then never listened again, which I think is how most people do podcasts.
Okay.
But I of course did the thing where I got all of my friends to listen. I got everyone into it. Like, you have to listen to this show.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until Andy Hamer listened that he said to me, hey, you should do this.
So historically, that is exactly how I remember it. We were all super inspired by Night Vale. And yeah, I think that got us kind of thinking in directions of, things that we cared about, sci-fi, Star Trek type stuff, and how the medium of podcasts, could be something a little bit different. And that's pretty much, that's where it began, that inspiration from things like Night Vale.
And then I recall that, like many of the encouraging words you had for me, I just sort of sat on it for a while and would just sort of agree with you that it was a nice theory. And then you basically said, well, come over this night, we'll watch Night of the Living Dead, and we'll write it out, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think I kind of sat on it for a while is the title of your biography. And I'm the same way. I come up with some projects, and then once I tell them to somebody, then I don't have to do it anymore.
Right.
For some reason, that's good enough. I remember you sitting and me pacing, because I can't think without pacing. And it was in the kitchen. I think we were just drawing on, our sci-fi backgrounds to kind of put together an overall idea, which was probably in reality just like super minimal, just nothing. And then you took your skill sets, your toolbox, and turned it into something real.
I remember being in the kitchen listening to the cover show albums, going back and forth. I do remember your idea was to have like all the recorders on the ship going, and that was like the reason for the recording.
Yeah, I think we were just kind of focused on how to tell that type of story. Sure, you could just, talk into a microphone and do that, but having there be something that, I don't know, a medium that within the medium to, execute the story.
So was it like an interesting story choice where you thought it was just an interesting direction to go, or was it more trying to find I guess an excuse or a reason behind the format that is podcasting? Like Night Vale was a radio show, so it makes an amount of sense you'd be listening that way versus just doing something more like an episode of Star Trek you cannot see.
Yeah, I think it was kind of just something about finding a unique way to do it that wasn't just, the standard, telling a story in audio only.
Yeah. I like that you bothered to put that much effort into
with
that.
any, I guess, emerging media, like, you have to, like, stand out somehow. My thought process always goes back to hearing, like, when my dad was a kid, growing up in rural West Virginia, they would listen to, radio shows. As soon as I heard Night Vale, that was instantly what I started thinking of. And, like, how do you do that now, but make it something different and, not just be straight up with Buck Rogers.
Do you remember when, because I remember I have the drawing of it in one of my notebooks out here, I wanted to call it the Starliner Gillespie at one point?
Yeah, I didn't like that at all.
Right, you kept saying that it makes it sound like a cruise ship, and I just kept stubbornly insisting that people would get on board with it, and you were very rightfully and smartly dug your heels in, because you knew I knew nothing about the military or cruises.
Yeah, or either of those things. They felt like what is this, like Jason and Argonauts are going on a day cruise on the, I don't know. I wasn't a fan.
We didn't come up with the idea of doing it as an anthology until Mark and I had recorded the first season. Originally, it was just going to be the ongoing adventures of the Saratoga, and that's why we put the Dogless space line in to come back to in season 2.
Yeah, I did. The expectation was, I think, kind of that it was this story. I didn't know where it was going to go after that. And I'm so glad that it has evolved into what it has evolved into.
Do you remember when we were trying to come up with titles for the show? In my memory, you had 1 or 2 words that you wanted to be in the title. Do you remember that?
No, not really.
I feel like one of the words was theater, or one of the words was tomorrow. I feel like you said you wanted one of those 2 words in the title. That the theater of tomorrow, maybe it's kind of like low hanging fruit, and I don't know, but I think that when we were talking about titles, yeah, I had definitely an attraction to this, like, and you have to say it, like, the theater of tomorrow. You have to say it like that when you say it. I do remember thinking that this is perfection. This is gum. And I don't recall who came up with the Theater of Tomorrow, because I did manage to find the very old email that was a list of title suggestions I had sent you. And some of them were really, really bad. A couple of them were joke answers, and some of them were pretty decent. What's interesting about it, though, is that none of them are the Theater of Tomorrow. So I don't know who came up with the actual title.
I can't honestly, say with 100% certainty who came up with it either. I'm sure it was like a collaboration. One day we were back on the phone, going back and forth on it. I don't know. We got there.
That's all that matters. I kind of like that there's an amount of mystery to at least that element of it, because it all tends to get a little swirled together with these creative collaborative things, especially when a lot of the process took place 3,000 miles apart and over like the course of a couple of years. So it's tricky to remember who came up with exactly what and which credit is due where. So I kind of like that the actual title of the thing is lost.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think whatever credit I'm due, it's basically like a point of a percentage.
Okay, that is actually all we needed. I have my attorney on the line with us.
Sell it. Give me my less than 1%. You did fantastic work with a concept that we came up with together in whatever degree, and finding people like Mark to help you make it happen just came out, I don't know, for lack of better words, perfect.
Thank you. It's been so much of the credit obviously is due to you for pestering me into doing it over a period of, I remember it being months, maybe it was only weeks, but I do remember you were insistent to the point that we had that whole night together where we broke the story and wrote it all down. I think I still have those papers somewhere, and hopefully we can put them up on the video. Hopefully people are seeing them right now.
Yellow legal pad full of ideas and little tiny spaceship sketches.
Yes, I do.
Exists somewhere.
Yeah.
We had a very long time where we really reveled in unhappiness, which spurred on creativity.
Well, I mean, I got it. Not to get too schmaltzy on my end, but over the past 3 or 4 years, as I crawled my way out of anxiety and depression and misery, I gotta say it's way better for creativity to have balance and peace and a bit of happiness. And I think the depressed, tortured artist thing is a comfort we tell ourselves while we're going through it to make it seem worth it in some way.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's easier to handle not being instantaneously successful at whatever we're doing. And I'm going to get a little campy here, but I felt like, and I think all of our friends felt like, you were squandering your talent, not really creating. So I felt motivated for you to be motivated. So I'm happy that it turned into something amazing. After Saratoga came out and I told everyone here, like, hey, go listen to this. That's when I started to introduce you as Travis, my friend, the writer, but I didn't use air quotes around writer. So yeah, you did me proud.
Oh,
with this project.
God, thank you. I feel bad about all the horrible things I said about you in my interview. Before I guess we wrap the interview up, do you have a favorite Theater of Tomorrow season or episode?
I don't know. I think, just the first time I heard it, first episode, it being a real thing at that point. You know what I mean? Like it's not real until you hear that first episode. I think that is probably the best for me. But story-wise, probably something that Mario wrote.
Oh. Was that only 6 months before you moved out here?
That probably would have been August or September of 2013.
I don't think I had listened to a podcast. That's kind of how late to the party I am in some of these things.
I don't think it to you.
Right. And like I said, I always thought that it was just news and opinion anyways,
right,
as well. That I was like, oh, maybe I knew about, I listened to TED Talks. But I was like, that's...
Brag. I guess I'm jumping ahead. So when I moved out here, Mark and my best friend and our roommate at the time, Mario, who will show up later on the podcast, were working on their web series Rolling High.
Mario and I were in a D&D gaming group together, and I moved out here to pursue film acting. What better place to be than sunny Los Angeles? And then I had this idea to make a web series about D&D called Rolling High. We'll link here, we'll link there, we'll link... So anyways, we actually did make the entire series. It's a 6-episode arc where it basically follows the lives of 4 people who work in an office environment, and they play D&D on the side, and their lives mirror the D&D game, but they are kind of blissfully unaware of it, and we keep snapping back and forth. You were generous enough to come on as the art department. Getting mildly off track, but to bring us back to the podcast, we got through that ordeal, and...
It was fun.
Oh, it was great.
Of course, we lived together, so I just moved out here, and everything was going to go my way.
Right?
So then I start writing a lot. So Mark comes to me one night, and he says, I want to work on a project. He had 5 jobs at the time. He worked at 3 museums, Disney, he's doing his auditions. I never saw him.
He's doing a lot of audiobooks at that point in time, too.
And he was like, hey, I want to work on a project. with some more freedom. And he says, what about that spaceship radio show?
I was really interested in, I wanted to do something where we had more control.
And that we could finish.
And that we could finish.
That was a big thing. Even the simplest production where you shoot something, it takes so long to finish. And there's so many things that can make it look bad. Or just so many projects have been half done and abandoned out here. But with the podcast, it's just record it, cut it, and it's done.
Yeah. Yeah.
We thought
we were the team, right?
Yeah.
And that was part of what was appealing to it, is when you finally were like, yeah, let's do this. We knew it was just you and me, and we didn't need to rely on anybody else. Whereas with the film crew, like I needed the person to operate the camera and set up the lights and have the location. But with the audio, with an audio drama, it was just us.
and our dreams.
And our dreams. So when you were writing the actual scripts out, were you already paying attention to the idea of like, how am I going to write it so that it sounds
Yes.
proper?
I was, because the first thing I did was look for other science fiction podcasts like the one we were trying to do, which
Right.
at the time either I was not good at searching or there just weren't that many. Because what I found was X-1.
Oh, and that's old.
Countdown for blast off. X minus 5, 4, 3, 2, X minus 1, fire.
That's from the 50s. That's
Yeah.
an NBC radio program from the 50s that's basically just science fiction shorts. And I listened to that for about a month. 2 a day, one on the way into work, one on the way home from work. After about a month or two, I have the episodes written. I write them at work. I've already got the outline, so it's pretty easy. Just figure out some characters. And then that was where our knowledge, I think, ended. At any point we were ready to throw in the towel. We didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah. We didn't even have a towel yet
So
to throw.
then we had to find our actress.
Kelly.
Kelly Nienaltowski. So I asked a friend of mine, Tony Interdonato, and another friend of mine, friend of the show, E.K. Dagenfield, if they knew any actors that would be good, that might have chemistry with Mark, because it was just going to be the two of them.
In what would potentially have been a very small closet space.
Yeah.
Because at the time I did not have a sound booth. I was recording everything from like one of those sliding door closets, and I surrounded myself with coats, and I would wedge myself into what was the deadest space that I could create.
Whatever actress we found for free for this podcast that we don't know how to make had to be cool with recording this in someone's closet.
With all of this right next to her.
Smushed in.
Just very close.
So Anthony tells me Kelly, and he'd mentioned her to me before. He's like, yeah, I remember that lady Kelly I went to college with. She's super, super great. She's really amazing. She'd be perfect. So then I double checked with EK, who had gone to Webster with all of them as well, and I was like, what do you know about Kelly Nienaltowski? And I believe he said, Kelly Nienaltowski is not only a great actress, she's a wonderful human being. So we got her the script, she shows up, and we do a read-through. And it was perfect. So then the next step was figuring out what the next step was.
Well, we got to record it. So we had to actually like find a place to record it. And while my closet was an appealing option, I happen to also know a lady by the name of Krista Lewis from kind of my dealings in the VO community around town. And we asked Krista if we could use her booth to record. But let me tell you, like the VO community is amazing. They're very wonderful people. And very helpful, very generous, selfless. It's a wonderful community of folks to be around, and Krista fell, right in line.
So then we get them in the booth. I think we only recorded y'all 3 times.
The other interesting thing, usually we record people now in like a single session, so we record one person on the mic at a time, which we learned after the fact is a much better way to do it as far as audio quality goes. But we thought for the sake of chemistry, the sake of getting this read, since they are very overlappy in their dialogue, it actually worked out really well to have us both in there at the same time, recording in tandem. So that was an interesting aspect of that recording, and then we just hung out the rest of that night.
For like 2 hours, drinking wine.
Drinking wine, eating Pringles and pineapple.
and flirting.
If you don't know, Kelly and I have been dating ever since, I'm getting a little choked up, ever since we met. But we fell right into a relationship. We've been dating now for 4 years, as long as the show has been going. In fact, our anniversary is actually just the date of the first rehearsal.
So if nothing else, if the show never gets more successful than it is right now, we've always got that.
We were up all night. We were. It was wonderful, and we had a show, and now we had to edit it, and that part.
That took a long time for what that first episode was. That took us a long time to edit. The first episode, or the first season actually, every sound effect and background hum you hear was borrowed from YouTube. Oh, and various royalty-free sound effects sites. We just went through and looked for. That's where the theremin comes in from our theme. That's where all the button clicks come in.
Yeah.
Which was the only bit of business we could think to do at the time for a man in a starship alone.
Right.
And it took us hours and hours and hours to figure out how to do that. And you were kind of learning how to use Adobe Audition.
Actually, to be
went.
true, at this time, I did not have Adobe Audition. I was working in Cubase. I didn't even have the sound program that I'm using to edit right now. So we were working out of a totally different sound program in like the light version of Cubase.
You too can have a podcast.
Right.
And while he was doing that, like between Googling, like tag team Googling sound effects, I was Googling stuff like, where do you put a podcast? What is an RSS feed? How do I get an RSS feed? Just figuring out the very basic, getting it up the flagpole thing. And then that's when we, at the time, just had it up on SoundCloud and got the RSS feed and put it up through iTunes and in a very basic way, just had it exist. We didn't have a website. We didn't have a Twitter. We didn't have a Facebook. We didn't have any way to advertise or tell anyone who didn't know us personally that it existed. It did not occur to us to do that.
If you're creating your own podcast, take like a month or two to figure those things out, as you'll see a lot of podcasters who maybe do a bit more of a streamlined job than we do these days.
Yeah.
They take a bit of time to do some, make a trailer, maybe advertise a little bit more before they put out their episodes. I've always just wanted to act and create shows and stories. You've wanted to write.
I wanted to write and produce. We just wanted to have them finished.
Yeah.
So we did that. We made the episodes and told exactly no one. I think we had like 60 downloads. Most of those are friends and family.
Yeah.
And we were thrilled.
With even that small response, and we thought we had a good enough and an important enough product for ourselves, something that we could create and give to other people, that we wanted to create all the rest of them, and all the way up into what you see today. As Travis mentioned before, this wasn't the Theater of Tomorrow. It was the Lost Logs of the Saratoga. We arrived upon this notion that this would be a wonderful platform to write whatever we wanted, to tell as many stories as we wanted to.
We decided that anthology was the way to go. But then we needed a name. And I think I came up with 5 different names. And I asked Andy, so we went with Theater of Tomorrow, which is a title I like a lot, but I do remember having one that I was like, this is the one, guys. And you were both like, that's not it, Travis. We landed on the Theater of Tomorrow. Mark recorded that. We grabbed some theremin music, threw it under.
Gotta have it for sci-fi.
And at the time, we were using the RKO studio music. Which I thought no one would know what that sounded like. I found out a few years later that they use it in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So in fact, everyone knows what it sounds like. And then like most successful podcasts, we did nothing for a year. It was 1 year, almost to the week, that we released our next, Kennedy Roundhouse.
Right.
I guess that's the end of the start of the story. Obviously, as far as Theater of Tomorrow history goes, there are many more seasons, many more episodes. A second podcast, The Hotel, that we've started. another podcast that we are working on that is yet to be announced.
Right.
And
Well, I mean, a lot of ideas.
a
is the
podcast
point.
behind that one that we will be doing
Yeah.
next year. The histories of all of those we will be doing in the coming months, getting in specifically to the behind the scenes of each specific episode, starting with our next video, Lost Logs of the Saratoga, and how all that came to be specifically and what it all means.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we need to thank you so much for visiting our channel and listening to or watching the history of the Theater of Tomorrow, comprehensive as it was. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something. You know, like, subscribe, I don't care, do whatever you want.
All that sort of stuff.
There's something with a bell that has to happen. I don't know, do that.
Come back for additional videos. As we said, we got a lot planned for you, so hopefully it's going to be stuff that, that
Comment.
you're all... Yeah, comment. Tell us other video ideas that you might want to see. If there's anything that you're itching to know.
We're doing this for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you want? Okay, and then listen to the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
shows.
That's the shows. Listen to Theater of Tomorrow at Tomorrow Theater, and the Hotel Pod at the Hotel Pod on Twitter.
Oh, and if you want to find us on Twitter, it's at Travis McNuggets.
And at MP Witten.
He's professional. I don't know.
I just...
All right.
It's now time for our signature sign-off. Is that our signature
I guess
sign-off?
it is now.
I need to remember it for myself.
Okay, let's.
All right, we're out.
We're out. Is this
That's still recording?
who even knows?